刘培元的英文教室第142集，我们回顾67到70集，因为比较长，分上下两集，我只念啊，因为前面都讲过意思了，所以你要是意思不太懂，就看前面啊。拜登就职演说啊，他的这个只念啊，下集。Here we stand in the shadow of a Capitol dome that was completed amid the Civil War when the Union itself hung in the balance. Yet we endured and we prevailed. Here we stand looking out to the great mound when Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand when 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women from marching for the right to vote. Today, we mark the swearing-in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington National Cemetery, with heroes who gave the lost of a major devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, the days after the writers' mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to start the war of our democracy, and to drive us from the sacred ground. That did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. To all those who support our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you have placed in us. To all those who do not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy, that's America, the right to dissent peacefully within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps our nation's greatest strength. Yet, hear me clearly, disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for the Americans. I'll fight so hard as hard for those who did not support me and for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of a church, wrote that a people wish a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects for love that defines us as Americans? I think I know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, horror, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There's the truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, especially as leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and to defeat the lies. I understand that many Americans view the future with some fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs, about taking care of their families, about what comes next. I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you do, or worship the way you do, or don't get the news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against the blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance in humanity, if we are willing to stand in the other person's shoes just for a moment. Because here is the thing about life. There is no accounting for what fate will deal you. There are some days when you need a hand. There are other days when we are called on to lend one. This is how we must be with one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we will need each other. We will need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We are entering what may well be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside the politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. I promise you this. As the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but the joy comes in the morning. We'll get through this together. The world is watching today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America is being tested, and we have come out stronger for it. We'll repair our alliances and engage with the world once again. Not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's. We will lead not merely by the example of power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. We have been through so much in this nation. And in my first act as president, I would like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer to remember of those we lost in the past year to the pandemic. To those 400,000 fellow Americans, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers, we will honor them by becoming the people and nation we know we can and should be. Let us say a silent prayer for those who lost their lives, for those who left behind, and for our country. Amen. This is a time of testing. We face an attack on democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systematic racism, a climate crisis, America's role in the world. And one of those would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with the gravest of responsibilities. Now we must stand up, all of us. It is a time for boldness, for there is so much to do, and this is certain. We'll be judged, you and I, for how we resolve the cascading crisis of our era. Will we rise to the occasion? Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations to pass along the new and better world for our children? I believe we must, and I believe we will. And when we do, we will write the next chapter in American history, American story. It is a story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It is called American Anthem. But there is one verse stands out for me. The work and prayers of centuries that brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will be our children say? Let me know in my heart. When my days are through, America, I give my best to you. Let us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of a nation. We do this, then, when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best. They did their duty. They healed the broken land. My fellow Americans, I close today when I began with a sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I would always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I will defend our democracy. I will defend America. I'll give my all in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibility. Not of personal interest, but of public good. And together we shall write the American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, the American story of decency and dignity, of love and of healing, of greatness and of goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, the story that tells ages yet to come that we answer the call of history. We met the moment. The democracy and hope, truth and justice do not die or not watch but thrive. That our America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. This is what we owed our forebearers, one another, a generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we return to the task of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and to this country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America. 好，我们这集回顾到这里。